Welcome back to Living Resonance. I'm Monifa, and today we're exploring the cosmic current of the gene keys in the lunar cycles. So you can cultivate your voice, live your genius, and weave your legacy in harmony with the current frequencies. Right now, we're currently in the lunar phase of the new moon in Gemini, which is Gemini key 12 or gene key 12 and human design gate 12. And we're experiencing the themes of vanity, discrimination, and purity. So I would just like to say that I usually use discernment when talking about discrimination, just because it's more comfortable for me. And this is about the genius of authority. And to reclaim your authority using your Gene Key 12 during this solstice time of year is the objective. So in this video, we're going to get into what it really takes to create in this current environment. Most people think authority comes from the loudest voice in the room or by using strategic silence as a way of getting attention. And there is a desire right now to be heard over the noise because there is plenty of noise. And especially if you know you have something that's powerful or really is needed in this environment, you want to be able to transcend the noise, right? You're most likely to be heard, just so you know, if you are speaking from your intuition, which is exactly what this new moon energy is about. So you're in the right place. And lately, I've been talking about the energy of Uranus in Gemini and the amount of random distracting information that that energy creates at this time. So it's an all-time high. We haven't experienced this amount of information and change and the difference of thinking as well as what's coming up because that's what Uranus does is it creates sudden change. So you'll feel like you need to kind of pay attention to the changes because a lot of us grew up in a period of stability and that change was the strange thing. And so we need to focus on the thing that's changing when you really just have to flow with the change and the focus should be on what is for you to do or what is up for you is how I like to say that sometimes. So, with all of this going on, you'll want to focus and stay tuned into your intuition in order to understand what to say and not to say, especially in this new moon energy. We're in creation mode going into this solstice and so allow the specificity of the light source gets it gets more refined at this time, or actually it gets more abundant at this time. So allow that abundance to really to amplify something specific for you in this new Gemini energy as the solstice comes through. Amplify your understanding, your way of thinking, your way of connecting to others and being relationships. Those are all available in this energy. We get even more specific as you go because this energy is telling us how to create from our depth of knowledge. So we're not just out here flying blind here. We're going to get a conjunction showing up with this energy. I'm not sure what sign the moon will be in at that time, but it will pass through the Uranus in Gemini because it is new moon Gemini. So sometime around then, it will pass through for that. I forget what they call it, but complete conjunction. So just so you know, in order to maintain like a sense of not going crazy, it will help to tap into the depth of not what somebody's told you knowledge, not your degree the stuff that you've experienced yourself that you know for true because you've tried it all the ways and we know it works, right? This is wisdom, things that you've experienced that you know in your spirit, in your bones. That is what you want to lean into, not some fly-by-night thing, not random downloads. We can get intuitive downloads from anything. Okay, this is about getting into the knowledge that is abundant within you because we have a lot of Jupiter action going on too, but we're not getting into that here. So we'll start about how to create from our depth. with human design. And Karen Curry Parker calls this gate 12 channel. And so that's describing the idea of intuition meeting speech as clarity in communication. So what's hard about that, like what may be difficult, what challenges might come with also this experience of the energy to be able to do this work of speaking with intuition is trusting your divine timing, trusting that things are happening when they're supposed to, honoring yourself enough to let yourself wait until you feel good about doing it, which is kind of one of my ways of saying, like, knowing in your body when is the right time, when it's a whole body yes, when it's the right mood, not just from yourself, but in the environment and in the presence of mind of those you are with to speak. Right? So there's other things that are challenging about this energy is maybe getting shy. Maybe you feel that not quite right time, not quite right energy, feeling this as shyness. And that's definitely true for me. I've done that most of my life and not as much lately, but definitely not gonna happen ever for the rest of my life either, right? There's a time where I kind of get shy of like, ooh, not yet. Ooh, and then I sometimes allow that to shrink my energy. But you don't have to shrink your energy. You just get to continue to sense what is the right time, what is the right entry point with your words, what wants to be said, right? And so in that way, the other part that makes this hard is honoring the words that you choose, because sometimes they may not sound normal or the way other people would say it. Right. And so when we're in this energy, sometimes it's going to come out differently because they need to hear it differently. So we're not don't let that make you feel like you're not saying it right or doing it right. Okay. So and then the other part, and well, and part of that is just trusting that you are connected and that you're getting that information from a divine and loving place, right? So, and how do you trust that? Is that you're connecting to it and you know what that feels like, okay? And then to the other part is to own that because yes, there is a sensitivity, empathy, and saying things in the right time in a way that people can receive them. And then there is the piece where you're just honoring what you're here to say and do and to create, and then you're not apologizing for that. That is what you're here to do. So that's another challenge of this energy that it might look different. It may feel like you're intruding. It may feel like awkward for other people, but that does not make it the wrong time. It just makes it something that is entering the space anew, right? Which is what a lot of us are here for. A lot of us are here to bring the new. We're here to bring the new era, right? So optimally, in this energy, you're going to be called to rededicate your creative process. So whatever gets you into the space where you can tune in to that divine source. And that's what being inspired is you're being inspired to create or to speak. All of that comes from the same place, right? So you're honoring that. And you are being patient and present. So instead of feeling like, oh, I want to just go, oh, you're like, not, and now, yeah, I'm just kind of gracefully entering into that space and a calm receptivity to inspiration. So ultimately, you're like, you can maintain that sense of peace and calmness in this desire for getting the information that wants to be shared too. That's part of it. You're like, no, something I need to say something, but the information isn't coalesced or it's not quite the right time. And so there is this kind of feelingness of and then right at the right time, right at that downbeat, you're gonna get that indicator, then it's gonna feel divine. It's gonna be amazing. And people, these are the spaces where people can hear a pin drop, outside of the speaker. And so that's honoring that stillness, not feeling you have to rush into it or fill it. Um, and then the words become a vessel for the healing. And so instead of Sometimes this can also be, there's a lot of fire energy. We talked about that last in the last video as well. So we did a little bit more around Uranus in the last video as well. And a lot of this fire energy that is coming up just from being in the summer, being in a fire period, being in a fire year, being in a fire season. A lot of that is going to amp up the will, the willingness to be more confrontational, and so sometimes in that energy, it's really hard to hold still. It's really hard to honor stillness when you're ready to go, right? So, it's okay. It's okay. Like when you're ready to go, go. And then when it's time to enter into a space where you can channel what wants to be said, then you want to enter into that stillness as much as possible. I think another thing that we're learning to do in this energy is to really to um, not feel like we have to create a separate space to enter into stillness. A lot of us are being actively requested to bring our meditative state, to bring our centered state, to bring our focus state into spaces and not letting that be a different way of being than it is when we are in our connection and our awareness of divinity. So, how do we know um that we are unbalanced in this, that we're getting the energy in an unbalanced way, where or we're experiencing it or we are acting in it in an unbalanced way, is that you'll be frustrated because there's a lot of you want to go, right? There's a frustration, there's a self-doubt, so that hesitation, that shyness, yeah. There's an urge to force communication before timing is right. All right, we just spoke about that. And may look like speaking impulsively. This is directly from Karen Curry Parker. Oversharing. It could be oversharing, and none of us know anything about that. Or withholding your truth out of fear that it won't be received. So that's another piece, right? That sometimes we wait too long, or we are holding silence because we want to maintain how somebody sees us, our air of authority, our control. Maybe we've in the past used silence as a form of control of energy. So that's something to watch out for in this energy. And what we know is gets even clearer with the gene keys because it tells us about knowing the difference in what is good for us and what is not. So me and Karen Parker mostly focused on what to say and not to say. And Gene Keys is letting us know. And this is something about what we are receiving as well. What is good for us, what is not, who is good for us, who is not, and that connection and relationship understanding. So that's wholly available to us. Again, we got the shadow of vanity, the gift of discrimination, and that's why I like to call it discernment, and the city of purity. So we're talking about how we're getting this information, which is the intuitive sense out of a pure heart. The heart transmutes so much for us, and it really is our gateway to speak out of love anything that must be said. And if we're tuned into that, then we will have a greater understanding. But what most people are missing is really the connection through into the ground and into the womb space and to allow themselves to transmute it before it comes back out through the heart, because then we tend to bring our emotion and weight it towards what we want and need, right? Which is not ever a completely bad thing, but it could be clear. It could be clear, right? So that's just one of the secrets of speaking with clarity is doing your own work, your own shadow work, your own actions, your own um, communication, right? So that when you come into a space, it's about the one thing and you don't have to bring everything else into it. Yeah. And then sometimes, again, to have a deeper connection and relationship, you may need to get into needs and desires. That's an intimacy that happens in really close relationships. So, and people are going to want that more, by the way, even your non intimate relationships. So like friends are going to want more of your truth, your vulnerability. Community is going to want more of your truth, your vulnerability in order to decide to follow you. It's part of what I've been picking up on in this sense of authority. Not the old version of just because I said so. Okay, this is the new version of because you carry a wisdom and an energy of wholeness around the thing that you are leading on, right? And that is what people are going to be looking for in this new Aquarian age. That's the new era of leadership. It's not all about, knowing the right people and all the things. It's about what is your affinity to what you know. And do you know it in your bones? People are going to want to know how you know it in your bones. Okay. And so, the shadow here is vanity. This is when we are living only from our own sense of being different, we're from being special and having things that nobody else has. And this is very true for, I think, of anybody who is a visionary or a singer or a leader. We have a very big ego in that way. We really do like to do things. We want to be the person that has that great, makes the change maker that's going to make the difference, right? And so this is the shadow of that, right? That you can only hear yourself and how you're unique because it keeps you in separation, which we've talked about, I think, and or we will. And this is the loving the sound of your own voice. And I believe I might be one of those. There are times when I'm in my own space with my voice, especially when I'm singing, which is why I sometimes prefer singing to myself and singing for myself than I do singing for others or performing. In any case, there's a reason for that. And if we are in a balance with that, then we are also using that as our tuning fork to share in a way that's intentional and clear for others. In the way I sing even in public is still to maintain that understanding of what is my relationship to it, how am I feeling, how am I sharing those feelings, what is transmuting through those feelings in this shared sense. So that's something that I like to tap into if I am performing. And this is what I recommend for pretty much anybody who's doing live performance. It's kind of my niche area. I need to do more of it. I'm not lying, but I record these live. I do not. I mean, if you ever see something that's edited from me, it's probably not a me problem. It's probably the energy, like, the internet went out, something like that, because I want it to be me. I have fillers and things happen, and that is what you're gonna get because I feel like that is how you hear the whole of the transmission. Otherwise, it rings false eventually, right? So there's that. There's the desire to hide in silence. Again, this is the tool, and silence is a tool, not a timing, like it's in the right time to speak and I think of that as a rhythm, right? It's not in the right rhythm of what wants to be created. And self-identification tends to be equal to vanity. So basically, instead of it just being about a greater sense to come from, it becomes about wow, it makes you different, how it makes you special, why it makes you better, right? That's the difference. Okay. And that feeling of separation and for the, whether it's out of victim consciousness or out of a desire to not be that other thing and not be, I call it affiliated with that other thing, in that kind of ego-ness, which I get a lot with people because they don't want to be considered that A-type kind of old school authoritarianism, patriarchy, you hear me, right? Like they want none of that. And so they go too far in the other direction in order to be different. But is it authentic? Not if it's without your authority. The true sense of authority is, all of this is kind of a defining of that and this energy, okay? So yeah, and then we come back to now I have my note for if you think you're overcoming that vanity, if you think you're above ever feeling vain, that in itself is a vanity because you think you're different. Right? You think you're different, that you never have an ego problem. You think you're special. You're human, right? So there is some time in the wide universe in which you're experiencing your own vanity. We can trust that. Okay. We are all living this experience. And so as long as you felt separate, so as long as you're looking at who you are as a separation of who other people are, that is a sense of vanity in the shadow. So the nature of this is really so that we can clarify what is different in us so that we want to share. So it is a level of difference, like discerning the difference of something. Um, and it is here so that we can express the things that we are here to serve in our form of authority, in our form of leadership. There's no other. There is no other that can do it the way we can and is necessary. Otherwise, you would not be here. And that if your form is silent and carving a tree, that's your form of sharing what you're here to share, right? It doesn't have qualifiers here. Anything that is part of what you feel a purpose to, that when you feel alive when you're doing that work, is what you're here to share, right? So this is what this nature of the quality of this energy is that you're here to be the person that wants to share. You can look at this as numerology, one being self, two being the relationship of one to another. And that could be people, that can be animals, that can be houses, that can be anything, right? So you have a relationship, I think, including yourself. You have a relationship with yourself, right? So there's that. I don't know if I've ever spoken this piece in my life. Yay, Gemini energy. All right, so connected to thyroid and parathyroid. So this is where in our bodies systems and how our nervous systems, what gets activated in order for us to share the impulses of ideas, what it means in the just the loops in the brain and the nervous system, and how they get translated into words, language, and expression. And so we call it Richard Rudd, he talks about the larynx and the thyroid, and how the larynx in the Dutch, so I forget what it's called, etymology, and the etymology coming from the Dutch means, can be translated as the shield gland. So something to protect the glandular area of the thyroid and parathyroid, right? The thyroid is the etymology of the Greek is shield. So there's a sense of protection, and this is where we're getting this idea of discernment. We're getting this idea of there's some things that are to be said and some things not to be. So some things to be received and not to be received, right? I need to slow down. Some things to be said and not to be said. Some things to be received and not to be received. Okay, so there's that. And what happens when we're talking with Karen Curry Parker about when things are not operating in the optimal energy is usually fear is happening when when we're not in optimal energy. So the fear that tends to be generated with this energy is the fear that if you come from your heart, if you come from your vulnerability, if you come from your true sense of self, that you will lose power. So again, you'll lose a sense of control, or you lose the room, or you lose love or attention or a lot of things, the fear of loss, essentially, right? So the programming here, the programming partners, so those that are following a little bit further with human design, is 11. Okay, so 11 is idealism. So ideally, ideally, this is kind of what allows the discernment. Essentially, you create the the highest possibility. You're creating from the highest possibility, and that's what will live together if we allow for that balance between the two. Okay. When it's not working in that shadow, on the repressive sides of repressing this energy, it feels like elitism, right? This sense that you're spiritually evolved, you're above the fray, right? And believe different than what they say. So a lot of times what we get, especially in spirituality and in religion, is that they say one thing, love your brother, and then they go out and hit people that look different than them, right? That's elitist, right? That you can hold that duality and call both true for yourself, is part of what I forget. There's a psychological term for it, but it's fooling yourself. It's the shadow. That's what it is. Okay, that's how you know. If that's what's happening, then there it is. And the other thing is pride in being different. And this again, he doesn't really say this in the chapter, but I'll say it. I'll say it. This is very common in religious communities that you hold your ego, you hold your pride as being different. Well, I'm a Christian and therefore I'm different than everybody else. I don't have vanity. I'm not attracted to the wrong people, right? Like, whatever. Like, that's my answer to that idea. Anything that's possible for humanity is possible for you. Now, it may take extreme circumstances for those things to happen, but that doesn't mean that it wouldn't happen if not this lifetime and the next, okay? Let's just say on those varying timelines, anything's an option. The universe is your oyster, yes. On the reactive side of this shadow energy is malicious. So anger, using the voice to cause pain. This kind of energy is really great at pushing buttons and causing pain. So finding the exact right word to set you off and trigger, that is the same energy, y'all. So it's available. So just so you know, if you're getting into that space, what I said in the last video, right? Breathe. Breathing is good. Pausing is highly recommended. And you're hearing this across the board. Pretty much everybody that I've ever looked to for information is saying this right now. Breathe, take your pauses, take more pauses than you think you need. Slow down, all right? I don't think anybody could really, that would be a bad advice at this point. You're going to want to go faster than is really necessary. So slowing down will not kill you. It's okay. You can take an extra minute to breathe. A minute is not going to make or break you ever. Okay? Just breathe. Okay? I'll breathe with you. And in the evolution, how do we shift into the genius of the gene key? Is when you realize that love for self, for who you are and what's different about you means love for everyone else and who they are and what is different about them. Okay? That's how you know you're moving into the right spaces, right? So love for others ultimately is a good indicator that you are speaking from the right place. Okay? So in this understanding of discernment is to know what and who are healthy for you. So some of us are more ready to be in certain spaces than others. Some people would not do well in loving people in certain spaces. And sometimes people are forcing themselves into spaces they are not ready to love in. You do your work first before you go out and take your superiority out to others. Okay? Um, turning your desire to be better than others into art. So this same evolution, this part of the nature of this energy is actually just so that we can create something that we see as a higher form. And there is a sense of like more light being available in higher forms. And so instead of making, or you thinking that you can make people do that, or that you have some capacity to force it on spaces, places, people, like do it with the inanimate. That is what it's there for. Like we are literally here to transform things, and this is what art is. So that is the point. But sometimes we want to fix people instead of loving them. And so the goal is to fix things, right? But not people, and to love people and not things, right? So this is a way to strongly let yourself be motivated by feelings, but again, not in the imposing your feelings on other people, but in being clear on what it means and what the objective intention desire is for a space. So, so this is also being able to love the things that make you feel good. This is something that I see that's wildly lacking in the world right now. We tend to want things, desire things, want people, desire people because of what they make us look like to others. Ugh, yeah. But it is a human tendency, so don't get too weirded out and be discerning. Yeah, like this is not the place where we're getting those needs met. You want to actually tune into the things that are actually in your resonance that feel good to you, and that's how you navigate not running away from old patterns, from old fears, creating same relationship problems, which was indicated, I believe, with not, I think it was April. April was part of our energy that was allowing us to discern the difference between those two things, right? This is about recognizing when someone is not expressing their pure soul. So that's the genius of that, is that you can actually see when somebody is not speaking their truth or not speaking to their innate desire. They're speaking to kind of the society programmed desire. If they do not fall in love with something, they just trust it. So that's people with this gift. Um, a lot of people with this gift that are operating in the gift they just love everybody. They could talk to anybody, they love everybody, they could hug anybody. They are those people, right? And if they don't feel that open with you and there's a shutdown, they tend not to trust the connection, not necessarily you. Sometimes people get those confused on both sides. But just to, timing is a big piece. So sometimes it just means that they need to know a little bit more about you and understand what is missing in the connection, or you need to get clear. You need to be clear or more transparent about who you really are so that they can see that clearly and embrace it, right? So, challenges, compromise. They hate challenges. I mean, they hate compromise. Okay. This energy is discerning. This is the discerning artist. Okay. This energy does not want to see your half attempts at getting things done. Okay. Don't be coming in with a, grade D project completion and calling it a grade A. They will not appreciate you wasting their time. Trust. Okay. And so that's something to know. Just in the general energy of people, they might have an ideal of way of getting something done or what it's going to look like as an end product. And if you bring in kind of half behind work without being clear that maybe you're in a stage of the work or maybe you need a little bit more time for completion, instead of trying to hide that, just talk about it. Okay, don't hide it because there'll be a general sense of like that's not good enough. It's no. Okay. Um, and so the other part of this is being fascinated by the myth of true love. So the artist in all of us, and yes, it's in you too. Don't ever come to my space and think that you're not an artist. We are all creating out here. Okay. Your art might look a little different, but that's okay. And if you want to pick up an artistic pursuit while you're here, I will consider myself honored that I instigated it. So the artist is always looking for this, what Richard Rudd is calling the myth of true love, because true love is like, it's like it's an emotion. It's not you know, anybody who's been married for more than 10 years understands that's not something that is going to be every day of your life. It's not about that. But there's a true romantic is looking for that moment where we can create that sense and we can fall in love again in a more present timing that allows us to see the ideal version of the connection and coming together of a thing. And that's really what art's about. It's about that, like being the hands that create the evolution. As a singer, it's about being the vessel in which that beauty that music emanates, right? So there is that, and the art allows the transcendence of emotion. So there's an interesting kind of interplay here where he's going into the city, which is kind of um, a higher, wholer version of everything, that all the facets are reflecting this understanding of higher, pure connection. Okay. So in that, it's not necessarily again and clearest you can possibly be. It's not about your feelings because those are just indicators of where the truth is, right? So true clarity is about the truth, right? It's not about I wish, I want, I hope, I wish, I trust, I one day, right? It's just there, the now truth. And that does change, yo. Like that's kind of why there's a myth that this is going to stay the same all the time. That feeling of love is just going to be the same all the time. That's why it's not really, don't really work that way. Anyways, so sometimes being heard in this energy, like this, what we understand about this energy when we really sit with it. So sometimes being heard has nothing to do with speaking, which is a lot of my work of the vocal power work, vocal power work. A lot of it has nothing to do with what you're saying. It has to do with how are you entering into a space. It has to do with how are you feeling when you do enter into that space. It has a lot to do with how are you connecting to the truth while you're in that space, right? And in conclusion, sometimes being heard has nothing to do with speaking. And there are 1,000 ways to lead and share what you have to offer. And you can pick any of them as long as they're inspired. Okay. So I have a couple questions that you can have for journaling and an affirmation, which are these are Karen Curry Parker's questions for the new moon in Gemini. Journal on these things. What part of shyness is a cue to connect more deeply with Source? So when we're really connected, then we understand like, oh, it's just a timing thing. It's not a I'm doing it wrong thing, right? The next question, where in my life am I feeling pressure to speak, act, or create before I feel fully aligned or ready? Okay. And then affirmation is quote from Karen Curry Parker. I trust the timing of my voice and my creations. I am a clear and sacred channel for divine inspiration, and I allow my truth to emerge with grace, purpose, and power. And if you want to know more about my work and why I'm getting so lit up about this key, you can check out my free PDF, 6 Steps to Mastering Your Voice and Impact, so that you can be discerning, right? So in order to be discerning, you don't have to, but it's nice to know these 6 stages of sharing with clarity and authority. So go ahead and check that out. It's free. And then the link in the description. And I'm also doing a voice activation for an event it's called Calling Men to Peace. So that's a little bit about that. Calling Men to Peace is a live cultural forum on June 23rd, exploring masculinity, healing, and what becomes possible when we men soften their armor. So we'll be live on Zoom, and tickets are $55, and it's featuring an incredible lineup of facilitators, artists, and thought leaders, including me. And so check that out at the link. Every ticket funds the Peace Activation's global peace building work. So they go out to places for free to be peace holders in spaces that need it. And we need that now. Trust and believe with all the fire energy on the planet. More of this work will really help us build the bridges into what's next in our near future. So, if at all possible, go ahead and get your ticket at the link in the description. And if not, just send your peace loving vibes on over. We can definitely use them because we want to really empower the work that will allow for the spaciousness of others. And and bringing men into a space where they can feel the truth of that and share the truth of that, it's going to transform the world. And that's why I'm going to be there. So hopefully I will see you there and have a beautiful rest of your day.